As we've reported, President Biden is set to speak with Chinese President Xi Jinping on Friday. The call follows a 7-hour meeting on Monday in Rome between National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan and a senior Chinese foreign policy advisor. Sullivan warned against China supporting Russia and answering its requests for aid. We're joined now by Virginia Senator Mark Warner, who's also, of course, chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Senator, thank you for joining us. Happy St. Patrick's Day to you. Much of the world is going to be waiting to hear how this phone call between President Biden and the Chinese leader goes on Friday. In your view, what should President Biden be discussing with the Chinese leader on this call?
Well, I think President Biden should be very strict with President Xi and point out that there will be repercussions, I hope, not just from the United States, but from our NATO allies, from Japan, from South Korea, from other nations who've rallied to the side of Ukraine. I think we've all been impressed by the Ukrainian people and obviously been all moved by President Zelensky. I've seen public reports that this relationship between Putin and Xi is at the top leader level, and that the Chinese economic leadership, who crave stability, are somewhat leery of Xi siding too much with Putin. So I hope that President Biden will be able to speak not just for America, but really take on the role that President Zelensky called on him yesterday when he made the appeal before the Congress to say, speak up for the whole free world. And I think China needs to pay a price if they are in any way continuing to assist Russia.
You know, as chairman of the Intelligence Committee, you're one of the top customers of U.S. intelligence as it's compiled by our intelligence agencies across the world. I'm curious, I want to talk Ukraine and Russia for us in a moment, but on China, are guys like you still getting as much intelligence and understanding of what's going on inside China as you were before things started to change and this Russia-China relationship became as pronounced as it is now?
We're still getting regular intelligence. We don't have and have not had, kind of complete visibility into Xi. Xi, just like Putin, is somewhat of an isolated leader. But we are extraordinarily focused that we've never faced an economic challenge like China. And when I mention China, I should always make clear our beef is with at least my beef is with the Communist Party and President Xi. It's not with the Chinese people or obviously Chinese Americans or others. But Russia is a military threat, and it was at one point under the Soviet Union ideological threat. It was never really an economic threat. Russia's economy is smaller than Texas. But China, in its competition, whether it be in 5G, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, is trying to dominate in a whole series of advanced technologies. And I think this alliance of democracies that are taking on Putin need to also be an alliance of democracies that have to take on some of the authoritarianism that is being promoted by China. Frankly, China is using some of these technologies to create a Orwellian state of surveillance that all of us should be concerned about.
Well, when you talk about that alliance of democracies, I know U.S. intelligence agencies and other intel agencies run by our allies are working together to either understand what Vladimir Putin is doing and thinking, maybe even trying to get a sense of who within his regime or in Russian society would be able to do something to, spark some kind of a change in government there. Give us, without giving away the secrets you're not allowed to give away anyway, give us a sense of how that work is going in terms of coordinating with the British, for example, or the others in Europe who may have eyes within Russia.
Well, first of all, let's back up for a moment and say the American intelligence community, combined with the British and others, have been so spot on predicting what Putin's actions were going to be, and frankly, eliminating any possibility that Putin had that somehow Ukraine started this dreadful war that Putin has started. On top of that, the American and other intelligence agencies have really built this unprecedented alliance against Putin's actions. Putin himself, and I'm not going to get into any of the intelligence, but a picture tells 1,000 stories. I mean, we've seen these pictures of Putin sitting at one end of the table, President Macron visiting, or even his own economic advisors being physically detached. This is a guy that was completely paranoid about COVID. He has been more and more isolated over the last couple of years. The number of inputs that he's receiving has gone down. History is full of examples of dictators who've been in power too long, who get a smaller and smaller group of inputs. I'm personally am even wondering whether Putin is getting any kind of real-time evidence of how badly his invasion in Ukraine is going. And one thing I do want to compliment is both the fact, and it's also a mistake, I think, by the Russians, the fact that they have not taken down the internet, the fact that we're still having reporting, your network, others, brilliant reporting coming out. And in many ways, the whole value around freedom of press and freedom of democracy, this is, again, what Zelensky's been advocating for. Putin, the absolute opposite. And I hope some of these images of Russian troops being bogged down are actually penetrating into Putin's inner bubble.
I just want to follow up on one thing you said. You say you wonder whether he's getting real-time reports of what's going on the battlefield. Do you have reason to believe he's not?
Again, I'm not going to weigh in at all on any intelligence. I will say you this. It has been widely publicly reported that the number of inputs that Vladimir Putin has been receiving literally for months leading up. And let's face it, this is a guy who doesn't want to hear bad news. And as we've seen him publicly berate some of his intelligence leaders, and my understanding, and this again in public reporting, even potentially arresting some of his intelligence leaders, this is a guy that doesn't want to hear bad news. I'll leave it at that.
Sure, understood. You're somebody, as a more moderate Democrat, who's worked in great cooperation with your Republican colleagues through the years on a host of issues, whether it's the intelligence work you do on the Intelligence Committee, whether it's on financial matters and whatnot. So you're a pretty good gauge of the other side of the aisle and how the Senate is working generally. And I'm just curious, because we're starting to see this in polling, where there seems to be sort of an easing of tensions maybe across political barriers to some extent, at least on this issue of what to do about Ukraine and Russia. Do you get a sense that there's easier times right now amongst you and your Democratic and Republican colleagues, and maybe a renewed sense of purpose and resolve to not only deal with this issue, but other issues?
Well, Ed, Vladimir Putin did what I'm not sure many folks could do, probably united at least 90 plus of the senators on common cause. And I think that's good news, number one. I also think that what Zelensky's message has been, which is he and the Ukrainian people are literally willing to give up their lives to try to get the kind of system with all the flaws that we have in our country, to live that kind of democracy, freedom of the press, freedom of expression. Yes, our system is messy, but it is the best system in the world. We are the good guys. And I think many of us Democrats, Republicans have said, yeah, we got differences, but we are fighting in common cause. We need to stand behind Zelensky. It's why we're trying to rush as much military aid. It's why we're trying to strengthen economic sanctions. I would include those against the Russian parliament, the Duma. I would include that against some of the Russian generals who are perpetrating war crimes. And again, I'm not a great prognosticator of politics, but I hope this common purpose of uniting behind Ukraine can continue on a going forward basis. There's a lot of things that actually we should and could be doing together. I'll give you a quick example. The vast majority of us want to make sure vis-a-vis China and vis-a-vis things like our supply chain make a major American investment in semiconductor facilities right here in this country. That's national security. It's standing up to China. It would also help relieve some of the supply chain concerns around inflation. We ought to build some more of that muscle memory back of working together. End of the day, I think that would be better for our country. And
that issue is working its way through both chambers right now with the hope that it gets resolved by the end of the spring or so, right?
Taken still way too long. I mean, we passed this in the Senate with 69 votes last July. It's crazy we're still talking about it. But, it is the sausage-making process.
Well, from your lips to everybody else's ears, let's hope there's a little more cooperation. Virginia Senator Mark Warner, Chairman of the Intelligence Committee, thank you so much for your time. Happy St. Patrick's Day. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you so much, Ed.